Think of one of the most egregious lies you can think of: 40 beheaded babies, mass rapes, and the execution of 15 medics. What kind of entity would you have to be in order to go along with those lies, or to not even condemn those lies?
If that's true, the US can take Greenland. He shouldn't be bitching about the Iraq war. He shouldn't be bitching about the jihadists taking over Syria, because after all, if they have the power to do it, then they have the power to do it. Might makes right. Power in and of itself is an excuse for whatever you're going to do.
Even me, like, I'm not a big supporter of Trump, but I've been noticing some stuff like this press conference that's making me think like, yo, Donald Trump might not be as corrupt and evil as I think he is. Welcome to another episode of Political Newbie. I am Noah Clark, and this is a space for newbies to politics like me. As a newbie who has been burned by mainstream media and the Democratic Party, I've been on a hunt relentlessly for new sources of information that I can trust. And let me just say, it's been very difficult. I feel like I really have to rely heavily on my gut, because experts, our government officials, people of authority, journalists, scientists, they've all been lying to us for so long, and the lies get egregious. I mean, think of one of the most egregious lies you can think of: 40 beheaded babies, mass rapes, and the execution of 15 medics. What kind of entity, what kind of person would you have to be in order to go along with those lies, or to not even condemn those lies? It just boggles my mind. I can't make sense of it. I mean, these are not inconsequential lies. These are lies that resulted in the collective punishment of unarmed men, women, and children that is still going on 18 months later. So, like, these are massive lies with tens of thousands of deaths as a consequence. You see what I'm saying? It's like you really have to rely on your gut because people lie so much. Nevertheless, I'm listening to everybody. I'm listening to all sides. And Scott Ritter, this guy has been on my feed a lot. And I've been listening to a lot of his interviews. And he has impressive credentials, right? He is a former U.S. Marine intelligence officer and a UN weapons inspector who resigned from his post back in the late 90s in protest. He accused the U.S. of manipulating and undermining weapons inspections in Iraq in order to justify military action against Saddam Hussein. He also tried warning us that intelligence was being exaggerated or fabricated over Iraq's acquisition of weapons of mass destruction so that we can go to war with Iraq. Now, why would the U.S. manipulate intel in order to go to war with Iraq? Why would we lie? And if we didn't do it, whoever is providing that intel, why would they manipulate the intel in order to force us to go to war in Iraq? Well, the consensus on whether or not invading Iraq was a terrible idea is pretty much on the same page. Everybody from all sides think that invading Iraq was a terrible idea, and Afghanistan, and pretty much all the wars in the Middle East. So if I consider what the consensus is today, I look at what Scott Ritter did in the 90s and I think, oh, he had really good judgment because he was in the thick of things. He was in when it was really hot, and he resigned in protest. So to me, that's a hero move. I'm like, okay, I am now leaning towards considering his judgment on current events, right? But I have to say, he does come off a bit harsh. I think there are a few people who think that, but I think it's realistic, to be honest. However, I do think that he has blind spots when it comes to the Middle East, and I can't put my finger on why, because he didn't seem to have a blind spot in the 90s when he resigned in protest for the invasion of Iraq. Anyway, here is a clip from Scott Ritter 4 days before Donald Trump and Bibi meet for the press conference. And he's discussing that Iran will not be involved in direct negotiations over the nuclear program. And then you'll see what Donald Trump says 4 days later.
I think we might see Iran find a way to a negotiating position. I don't think it'll be direct negotiations between Iran and the United States. I think this will be done through a third party.
We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it.
So what it sounded to me like is that Donald Trump 100% does not want to be involved in a nuclear strike with Iran, because obviously that would lead to World War III. So he just doesn't want to be involved with that. I mean, God forbid he's compared to Sleepy Joe, right? Some disaster. And that being the beginning of his presidency, right? Trump, the guy who got, bamboozled by Israel and led into this dumbest, stupidest war ever that could have been avoided. So then after this conference, Bibi goes off to the side, and it looks like he goes down into a basement where there's no lighting. I don't know why people didn't bring in some light or open the drapes, and records this message to everyone. But it looks like a private message, almost like it wasn't supposed to come out. It looks like a dad leaving a message for like his children, just in case he doesn't make it. And it's just something so dystopian about this message. Listen to this.
אני מסיים עכשיו ביקור שני בארצות הברית תוך חודשיים, ביקור חם מאוד עם ידידי הנשיא דונלד טראמפ. יכולתם להתרשם מהקרבה הגדולה והידידות הגדולה בינינו, והיא באה לידי ביטוי בנושאים שדיברנו. קודם כל איראן. אנחנו מסכימים שלאיראן לא יהיה נשק גרעיני. זה יכול לעשות בהסכם, אבל רק אם ההסכם הזה הוא הסכם נוסח לוב, שנכנסים, מפוצצים את המתקנים, מפרקים את כל המכשורים, בפיקוח אמריקני, בביצוע אמריקני, זה טוב. אפשרות שנייה, שזה לא יהיה. שהם סתם יגררו את השיחות, ואז האופציה היא צבאית. כולם מבינים את זה, על כך דנו באריכות.
Okay, so he said everybody understands this. We've talked about it at length. So what? Is he saying there's no point in talks? Like, what are we still talking about? Is that what he's saying to Donald Trump? Is he saying, like, what are we talking about? Did he, was he kind of surprised when Donald Trump said we're going to be having direct talks with him on Saturday? It was like a weird message to send. Also, it'll be very good if America goes up and blows up all the weapons, And I'm just thinking, wait, no, why can't you do it if you want to do it so badly? But anyway, this sounded like there was tension between Donald Trump and Bibi right there. I don't know if you picked up on that, but listen, the very next day, April 8th, a senior Iranian official goes on to Reuters and says that there is no way in hell that they are dismantling their nuclear program. Listen to this. Trump wants a new deal. End Iran's regional influence, dismantle its nuclear program, and halt its missile work. These are unacceptable to Tehran. Our nuclear program cannot be dismantled. So this brings me to Scott Ritter and why I think he has a blind spot when it comes to the Middle East. And I don't know, I think everybody has a blind spot when it comes to the Middle East. So listen to his position on the war in Russia.
Oh, for instance, we weren't friends during the Soviet Union, but we had normal diplomatic relations where we had people who could talk to one another to resolve issues so they didn't, go hot. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is still an important priority for both sides. But when it comes to the conflict, I think Trump has been just given bad information. He's being briefed that Russia's losing, that Russia is weak, that Russia is looking for a way out. The Russians will end this war when the war can be ended on terms favorable to Russia. Russia's prepared to do this fight. They've already passed the budget, all their organization, to go through 2027, 2028. The other thing is, the Russians, they didn't start this conflict.
He makes two really important points here. The first point is that Donald Trump is getting bad intel on what's going on in Europe. Somebody's telling him that Russia's losing when they're not. And we are prolonging this conflict and I guess spending a lot of money for no real reason. It's stupid. We need to make peace, give Russia what it wants, because the second point in what Ritter says is Russia didn't start this war. We started it, right? We crossed that red line. Oh my gosh. This is crazy because going back to the debate that Dave Smith and Douglas Murray had yesterday, and this is why people like Douglas Murray is the reason why I don't trust Zionists at all. And I'll tell you why. Dave Smith comes up with some hard evidence as to everybody from the US government to Russian government saying for decades, do not put NATO into Ukraine. That is Russia's red line. And Russia, it seems to me, based on the information that I have, did not try to invade Ukraine before 2022. So until Kamala went to Ukraine and declared that Ukraine was going to, join NATO, that's when Russia invaded. So when Dave Smith made this point, Murray's counter was that, nah, Putin has been dreaming about invading Ukraine forever, since the fall of the Soviet. And so that's why he did it. And he's a tyrant, he's an expansionist. And I'm thinking, if it was his dream, how come he didn't do it before they crossed the red line? You see how flimsy the argument is there? Which, to any reasonable human being, even somebody like me who doesn't know, you have to convince me. And if I'm looking at the information, I'm fact-checking Dave Smith and everything that Dave Smith pans out. And if your counter argument is no. Russia has been dreaming about it. It had nothing to do with the red line. And if anything, it had very little to do with the red line. That's not an argument. That's not something that I can fact check. If you told me that Russia has been trying to invade Ukraine several times over the last few decades or since the fall of the Soviet Union, you got something to work with. But other than that, what are you talking about? Anyway, it's just the lies, Anyway, but yeah, Russia did not start this war. But I don't see Scott Ritter using the same energy to make that claim about what's happening in Gaza. Like, Iran or Palestine did not start this war. Like, Iran had nothing to do with the Balfour Declaration. Iran had nothing to do with the Nakba. Iran had nothing to do with the military occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. Neither did Palestine. Iran had nothing to do with the fact that Palestinians don't have due process or the right to vote. And that's only two things out of a list of things that has been done to these people. And just those two things on its own is egregious. I don't even have to list anything else. But Iran had nothing to do with that. So Iran did not start this war. Neither did Palestine. So I know that Scott Ritter uses historical context to bolster his arguments, but I find that he falls short when it comes to the Middle East. And that's where I feel like he's a little bit like lopsided on his judgment. Because I'm desperately looking for someone to really give me a different perspective. I want a different perspective. I really do. But it's not coming through from any reputable person. It's a different perspective. A solid one is not coming through. Murray failed at doing that on the Joe Rogan podcast last night. So I find it really difficult that Scott chooses the hill to die on, and that is that if we go into World War III, Iran is to blame. So listen to this.
There's going to be a war. And the reason for the war is Iran's undeclared, openly admitted nuclear weapons program. Iran is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and it's signed as a non-nuclear weapons state. This means that Iran is not allowed to have nuclear weapons capability, end of story. And Iran maintained that up until the United States withdrew in 2018. They actually extended it on to 2019, 1 year to let America get back. But then when Europe failed to live up to its obligations regarding the lifting of sanctions and trade, Iran did what they were permitted to do under the JCPOA. When another member of the agreement ceases to comply with their obligations, then you are allowed to relax your adherence.
Right.
This is great. He's using historical context right now. I knew nothing about the JCPOA, so I did my research, and I realized that the JCPOA was the nuclear deal between Obama and Iran that was made originally in 2015, and it was meant to place restrictions on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for Europe or the West lifting sanctions on Iran's banking, and oil sectors. And the countries that were involved were the US, the UK, France, Russia, China, Germany, and the EU. But then in 2016, Donald Trump comes along and he's like, God, Obama does not know how to be a man. He's so weak. Like, how did he make a deal and not make it so that Iran is permanently incapable of making nuclear weapons? Come on now. So he decides, we're going to do a better deal, okay? Because I'm big and tough and I'll show you what a man does. And his deal was, okay, first of all, you are never going to be able to acquire nuclear weapons. So this is going to be a permanent restriction on you, a ban. You are going to give up your ballistic missile program. You are going to renounce any support for militant groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. And you are going to stay out of regional conflicts like in Syria and Yemen. And instead of going to Iran face to face like a man and saying, hey, this is the new deal that we're going to work out. We don't know what that stupid guy Obama did. A real adult is in charge. And instead of going to Iran face to face, they went to Europe and said, hey, Europe, these are our new deals. Go pressure Iran to do it. And Europe kind of pussyfooted around and never got around to it. And so Donald Trump was like, okay, he got fed up and he pulled out of the deal in 2018. Now, part of the deal, which Scott Ritter was talking about, is that if one party fails to live up to their part of the deal, Iran no longer is obligated to be in compliance with the terms. But for some weird reason, I don't know what it is, Iran decided that it was going to commit. It was going to stay committed for an entire year after Donald Trump pulled out of the deal. And I guess Europe was also sort of dipping, not Europe, but Europe was dipping on its commitments, like maintaining trade and lifting sanctions. So Iran dipped too. Iran was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not agreeing to this, and started producing enriched uranium and using advanced centrifuges. So here's the rest of that clip.
And so what Iran did is they went ahead and unilaterally ended the so-called sunset clauses that restricted the amount of enriched material they had, the kinds of centrifuges they had. What I'm saying, though, is that there's only one way out of this, and that is Iran has to put those aspects of its nuclear program that lend themselves to military application on the negotiating table and either eliminate them or have them monitored more efficiently.
Okay, so Scott Ritter said there's only one way out of this. And I'm thinking, what about another way? Like, I don't know, listen to 85% of the country and stop supporting Israel? Bernie Sanders says, recent polls show that only 15% of Americans support increasing military aid to Netanyahu. Yet, Congress just rubber-stamped Trump's plan to send $8.8 billion more. Republicans and Democrats took a constitutional oath to represent the American people, not AIPAC. So we do have other options. But back to my point about Ritter being a realist. We all know that there is no way on this planet Donald Trump is going to flip on Israel. Not this week, not next month, most likely not this year. So we have to deal with what is in front of us right now. And we have to realize that the chances that Donald Trump is going to be pressured into dropping targeted nuclear bombs on Iran is very, very high. And, another thing about Scott Ritter that I do respect is that in this interview, the full version of this interview, he does point out that the U.S. is a hypocrite when it comes to Israel, and that neither of them can be trusted because they always flip-flop on their deals. It's almost like you can't take the U.S. seriously or Israel. So he does bring that up for sure. So I feel like he's even in that way, but he definitely doesn't talk about the history of the conflict. And it's important to always keep that in context. So this is really funny because then he goes on to say something really insane, and Jamal Thomas has a response to it that I completely agree with it. But listen to this insane thing that Ritter then says.
We are not on equal planes, the United States and Iran. Now, I'm going to say this, and everybody's going to jump down my throat and call me an imperialist and all this. But the United States is the United States, and Iran is Iran, and we're not equals. That's just the reality of the situation. We do get to dictate outcomes, and we are dictating an outcome right now. Iran doesn't get to dictate this outcome.
Under that model, there is no such thing as sovereign governments. If that's true, the U.S. can take Greenland. He shouldn't be bitching about the Iraq war. He shouldn't be bitching about the jihadists taking over Syria, because after all, if they have the power to do it, then they have the power to do it. Might makes right. Power in and of itself is an excuse for whatever you're going to do.
So Jamal, this guy popped up in my feed like 2 days ago, and I really like him, so I subscribed. But totally agree, right? I'm looking at Scott Ritter, and I'm like, dude, you have really good judgment. What are you saying right now? Like, what is your position? Is your position that Iran should absolutely adhere to the non-nuclear proliferation treaty because it's the law and they have a legal obligation to do it? And then you're saying, well, might makes right. The U.S. and Israel do not have to abide by the law because they're the strongest. You know, the biggest kid on the block. So the laws don't apply to them. Is that your position? Because if that's your position, I get it. But it sounds almost as if you're not taking that position, but you're still saying that Iran doesn't have a choice but to kneel to bullies. I don't know. You know, that just doesn't make me feel like I can trust you being level-headed about what's happening right now. I do get the fact that he's just being a realist. Like, the fact of the matter is that's, I guess, what Donald Trump and Israel are thinking. That, you know, we're the big bad guy in the block, and, you know, you can't stand a chance. But then it gets so weird because we go into Ritter saying that we're pretty much not making a sound military strategic decision going after Yemen the way we are, and we're overexerting ourselves, and we're actually making stupid decisions. Listen to this.
The approach taken by U.S. Central Command is that we are in a campaign mode, meaning that we're not expecting to deliver the knockout blow every day, that we're bombing targets which are designed to be, in their cumulative impact to be either a deterrent or disabling Houthi capabilities. I don't think we understand the totality of the Houthi capabilities, just like during the Gulf War, even though we diverted over 2,400 individual aircraft strike sorties into Western Iraq, even though we deployed 2 Delta Force squadrons. The British deployed 2.5 SAS squadrons. These are commandos on the ground. Not a single launcher was destroyed. Not a single missile was destroyed, because we never understood what the Iraqis were doing. I would say that we have a similar lack of clarity about the Houthi, and what backs me up is that the Houthi...
Okay, so he's making this point that, we have bad intel? Because this is what Donald Trump says. So he's saying this on the same day that Donald Trump has the press conference with Bibi, and this is what Donald Trump says about the war with the Houthis.
I'll ask Pete to maybe talk about it for a second, because a lot of people are asking. The Houthis, we've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that. But they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough. But they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing.
I'm sorry, but Pete Hegseth, he seems to be the most slimiest person, especially after that Signal chat thing. He just seems to be like someone that you absolutely should not be trusting with intel. And it seemed to me that Donald Trump deferred to him to explain the situation more because he's I guess, receiving intel from Pete Hegseth. And, Scott Ritter is talking about the fact that the president is receiving bad intel about Europe, but he never really says that Donald Trump is receiving bad intel about the Middle East. And this is Pete Hegseth last year in November on Sean Ryan's show, I believe.
In the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always, the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works, we're always a decade behind in fighting the last war.
See what I'm saying? So this is the rest of what Scott Ritter says.
What we're doing is not having a debilitating impact on their ability to launch. And so I think we're at the stage in the game where CENTCOM needs to reevaluate what they're doing. We're running out of precision guided munitions. We're expending a whole bunch of munitions, by some counts over $1 billion worth. These are hard to produce. We're expending them quicker than we're replacing them. And more importantly, we're expending them against a target set that, in the grand scheme of things, shouldn't be absorbing this much precision guided munitions. We would need these, for instance, if we're going to have a big shooting war with Iran. We would need these if we're going to be fighting the Chinese over Taiwan. And we're depleting our stocks going after the Houthi in an unsuccessful so far effort.
So he just admitted that we're really unsuccessful in Yemen right now, and that we're going to be ill-equipped to take on Iran or China if it so happens. So, what he's saying here, where he's like, Iran is in this position where it absolutely has to abandon all its nuclear program because, might makes right and America is all powerful. And then he just talks about how vulnerable we are. It's just, you see the blind spots that when you're listening to this information and you're new, if your intuition is really like active, you pick up on these little moments and you're just like, I don't know. So I want to pivot to something that I've been noticing about Donald Trump, something that my intuition has been noticing about Donald Trump that I think might have an impact on how we're going to move forward with the Middle East and Iran especially. So I feel like the consensus on Trump is that he's unpredictable. Maybe not unpredictable in like, okay, he's going after our constitutional rights, for example, like our freedom of speech. He's deporting people left and right, and he's just appointing questionable people. Even though I was new to the scene last August and I was like on X and X Spaces, and people were trying to convince me that he just had all the wrong people around him in his first term, and I'm thinking, he's not going to be that different in his second term. I mean, he's in his 80s. People don't change. And in my opinion, he still has pretty scummy people around him, like Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio, etc. But so that to me isn't predictable. But how he's going to do those predictable things might be unpredictable. And so I feel like there is maybe an atmosphere in the White House going on right now that is concerned about Trump's unpredictability. And I say that because I think Trump really got a huge ego boost after this election cycle, that people from the other side wanted to join his team, that because of that, a lot of people voted for him and he got this landslide victory, a mandate. And I think he feels validated and vindicated in a lot of ways. And I think it's like really pumped him up. And so when it comes to his donors that he's supposed to be obeying and catering to, I wonder if he ever feels like they might be strong-arming him a little bit, even if there's a tiny hint, if he's likely to rebel against that. And I feel like he might be in that position right now because I think he understands that he has a lot of the population behind his back. Like if he came out and made a statement about anything, we'd just be like, what? You know, if he went against the grain right now, I think a lot of people would support him, because a lot of us, even me, like I'm not a big supporter of Trump, but I've been noticing some stuff like this press conference that's making me think like, yo, Donald Trump might not be as corrupt and evil as I think he is. Listen to this.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military. And despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, in one of the dumbest situations.
So I wanted to bring this clip up because you notice he's talking about the military, and then he brings up Biden. He always has to pivot to Biden. Like that is part of their messaging, like they all agree on. I mean, that's kind of what Pete Hegseth said in that signal messaging. Like, you know, JD Vance was like, guys, I don't think the American people voted for this. And Pete is like, we'll just like use Biden. We'll say Biden is terrible and we'll just keep it focused on Biden. So I think that they're all on the same page about just pivoting to Biden as that, you know, messaging thing. And I think that's also Donald Trump's subliminal way of communicating to the team that he is on brand, he's on message, he's not, you know, pulling away from their little team. He's with them, we're all working together. But then little moments like this happen and my intuition flag like flings up. Let's watch this.
But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion. We have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion.
The way how he looks over at Bibi and says, you'll like to hear this, as if they didn't talk about that at lunch before this meeting. Like they didn't talk about the fact that they're going to be putting $1 trillion into the defense budget. Or does Donald Trump not know that Bibi has eyes and ears all over the White House and pretty much probably knows everything that's going down? Or maybe that was Bibi's suggestion to someone and then someone suggested it to Trump. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but it just signal they're not on the same page. They're not as buddy-buddy as we think they are. Even though we see Donald Trump pulling the chair back and all that stuff.
And nobody but me would do this. Nobody but me would do this. You know, it would be nice to serve a nice, easy term, but we have an opportunity to change the fabric of our country. We have an opportunity to reset the table.
I love what he says, reset the table, because it just sets the stage for some of the other clips that I'm going to be playing here. And it just feels like somehow it's not just connected to like Canada and Mexico, who he likes to name drop, and China, but it's like connected to Europe and Israel. Let me know if you see that.
The problem is they cheat. They cheat like crazy. Canada cheats, Mexico cheats, just one of those things. And we had just a lot of good talks on a lot of things. I appreciate very much what you said about the tariffs. We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat.
I mean, he's good at pivoting, right? he's like, we can't be stupid people. People have been cheating us this whole time, and we need to reset the table. We need to change the fabric of everything. And at that point, he was responding to Bibi, who had said that he was going to remove the tariffs on on the U.S. because it's the right thing to do. You know, we haven't done it in ever, but yeah, today it's the right thing to do. And Donald Trump was like, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying, yeah, we have not been fair in our relationship, and we're going to remove trade to sort of like strengthen the bond between us.
Mr. President, do you plan to reduce the tariffs that your government put on Israeli goods, 17%?
On where?
On Israeli goods, the 17%. Do you plan
Well,
to
we're
reduce
talking about a whole new trade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. You know, we give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of, and we give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe if I said we give Afghanistan.
Wait a minute. He said we give Israel billions of, it's one of the highest, and then he pivots. And then he changes the topic to Afghanistan. Like, wait, what? What was he gonna say? Do you see that right there? It's like he has moments where he is gonna tell us the truth, like what his real opinion is, and then he pivots to messaging, to the brand, to, you know. I'm gonna play this again. You'll see. He goes, one of the highest, and then he pivots. Listen to this.
But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of, and we give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe if I said we give Afghanistan a lot of money, didn't it? Because that was a Biden deal, another Biden deal. Not only did he embarrass us.
You just have to keep picking up on that. Every time he's trying to save himself from something he just said, he will pivot to Biden because he wants to just, it's like a psychological thing to just let everybody know, no, trust me, I'm not going off the beaten path here. I am on brand, Biden, and blaming everybody else, name dropping everybody else but Israel. And always just reminding us that I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about the people in this chair who created a weird trading relationship between the U.S. and Israel, even though we've been giving them billions of dollars, one of the highest. Never mind. You know what I mean? It's like something is cooking in this. Between these two, I think there's a power play going on, and neither of them are liking it. And both of them, I mean, how do you have these two powerful guys? I mean, Bibi has felt like he owned the U.S. for the last, 20 years, and so he maybe has to. How does he try to maintain a relationship with Donald Trump where he stays a little bit subservient to make Donald Trump feels like he is the power figure in this relationship? Like, how does he do that? Or does he kind of get carried away and sometimes signals to Donald Trump that I am the boss here? And you know what happened to JFK now? You know what kind of influence we have now? I don't know, but it just feels like there's tension brewing. There is a part in the conversation in this conference where Donald Trump actually says specifically that people have been taking advantage of us and ripping us off for the last 50 to 60 years. He was so specific about those numbers. And literally, it's just a coincidence that JFK died 60 years ago. It's just a coincidence. And then the last point I want to make on this is even his vision on Gaza. It feels a little contrived. It feels like his talking point on this is to make sure that he's staying on brand, right? But then a tiny bit of information slips. Just listen to this.
People really do love that vision. It's a long-term vision, but so importantly is to have that be a safe field, because you're right smack in the middle of the Middle East. You're right along Israel. It should have never, ever been given away. It shouldn't have been given away by Israel. I don't know why they did it. I mean, I do know why, because they were promised peace, but that didn't work out too well, because it's one of the most dangerous pieces of land anywhere in the world. Gaza is one of the most dangerous places in the world.
I'm sorry, but there's a point in there where he looks over at Bibi and he's almost like, oh, let me not just get too carried away. And then he started talking about Israel should have never given away. He just switched. Are you seeing these little cues that's happening? And I'm thinking like, because Donald Trump has made some comments about what's happening in Gaza and actually talked about the people in Gaza, like humanizing them. And he's straying away from that. He's straying away from just mentioning the people. He's saying it's unsafe. He's saying it's dangerous. He's saying that it's the most dangerous place in the world, but it's surrounded by the sanest, safest country in the world. So how is it so dangerous? I don't think Donald Trump is that oblivious. So listen to the rest of this.
So they gave it away for good intention, and it didn't work out that way. And A lot of people like my concept, but there are other concepts that I like too. And there are some concepts I don't like. You know what I don't like? The way it is now. Because right now it's a dangerous death trap, Gaza.
So the fact that he's like, I have a good concept, and I like my concept, but I have other concepts too. It's like he just doesn't want to concede to Israel's plan. It's like he's fighting against the grain a little bit. Like he just wants to be his own person, and he does not agree. It doesn't look like he agrees with what Israel is doing, like Israel's grand plan. But at the same time, he does have to strategically maneuver around it because he just can't go nuclear, no pun intended, on his relationship with Israel. So I just want to say that I think that Donald Trump's this tension is going to have a huge impact on how we move forward with our relationship with Israel. Just want to say, in spite of the fact that a lot of people are giving Donald Trump money. So my first two episodes, in closing, I want to talk about my first two episodes were about the elites being fractured internally, right? I'm talking about this right now. Like there is friction in the club and how this freedom of speech thing is coming for everyone in the end. No one is going to be immune. And which is why we all must defend and protect each other's right to free speech, even if it's people that we don't like. And you see what Douglas Murray did on the debate last night, where he was like, oh, I agree with free speech, but he was also advocating censorship. He was saying, don't platform people with opinions. Don't boost them. Like, just keep it at a minimum. That's called censorship, buddy. Okay? And you got your platform. You had a chance to boost your opinion, and it failed. So, but no one is advocating for you not to talk. I'm just saying it failed. So it's not anybody's fault that somebody is getting more attention than you. It's that's your own fault, I guess. So listen to what's happening in the world of politics right now. Oh God, just in closing, okay?
So Florida Congressman Randy Fine recently inferred that Ron DeSantis is seeming a little bit anti-Semitic because he noticed that a Jewish Democrat who turned Republican over the topic of Israel doesn't seem to be that conservative.
Now, she switched because she's Jewish, and she didn't like how Democrats did Israel. Maybe that bothers Ron DeSantis. I don't know. I do find it troubling the two politicians in Florida that he has chosen to take issue with in a very vitriolic way in the last few weeks are both Jewish.
What makes this even wilder is Ron DeSantis actually flew to Israel with Randy Fine in 2019 to make history by passing the first ever Florida bill on foreign soil. This was, of course, a bill defining anti-Semitism, aka hate speech rules. Now, Randy Fine, since he's a special boy, his race, his religion, and a country that he likes gets special anti-American speech privileges in this country. He's using them against Ron DeSantis, who flew to Israel to pass them with him, by vaguely accusing Ron DeSantis of anti-Semitism.
Then, of course, the straw that's going to break the camel's back is Donald Trump's latest appointment, the Yehuda Kaplan, who is now the United States Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. Monitor and combat. Monitor? Yeah. Everybody, nobody's immune. I mean, they're going after each other. They're eating each other now. I mean, and remember that episode that I talked about Elon being a hostage? There is a lot of friction. They're coming after each other. So I'm going to end my episode on that one. And I am very excited to see you in my next episode. If you don't leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. And see you next episode.